So my recently completed review of ReZero was uploaded, and was it a literal minefield of comments and opinions. I have not had a comment section this heated since I've done a video on Sword Art Online, which is always guaranteed to set off a bombshell. On one side, you had the usual group of hype anime haters, finding it difficult to even fathom how such a show got so popular. On the other side were the diehard fans who deflected any criticism thrown against it, and somewhere lost in the middle were the people who were just like, yeah, it was alright. But the one thing I constantly noticed on the side that were defending ReZero was the continuous reference to the source material to counter any criticism that was made. This guy just misses the point of the larger story. Every problem he had gets answered in Arc 4 anyway. Are you an absolute idiot, Gigok? You're criticizing the narrative when it's just the prologue! The prologue! Which, after hearing all that, I could only think one thing. Here we fucking go again. See, ignoring the fact that a prologue that lasts 25 episodes already has flaws in its narrative structure, as longer stories has been able to set up a narrative in a much shorter time, and that longer prologues that have existed before, like Berserk, are essentially self-contained stories with their own narrative, and that there is absolutely no indication at all that this is just the prologue. Please don't make this an argument about whether ReZero is a good prologue or not. I did like the show, guys. I'm just trying to make a larger point here. The bigger issue here is that people are using the source material to excuse the criticisms of an adaptation. And honestly, this isn't the first time this has happened, and by God, won't it be the last either. We see this a lot with adaptations that are yet to be complete, or source material that is just really hard to adapt, like, you guessed it, the Fate franchise, the granddaddy of this entire debate. See, whenever I've seen someone criticize either one of the Fate adaptations, it's almost guaranteed to trigger a plethora of fans of the visual novels it was based on. Either we were watching it wrong, or the criticisms we had were never really true because they were addressed in the visual novels, and we should have really read the visual novel before watching the anime because that's the only real way to properly experience it. And while Fate is definitely the easiest example I can think of, this way of thinking is scattered across many different anime franchises. The peculiar thing is that anime is the only place I've really seen a source material brought up as an actual defense to the adaptation, as I definitely don't see this as much in other mediums. For example, we don't see the Watchmen comics used to cover up any faults this movie had, or any other film adaptations for that matter. Hell, we don't even see anime used as an excuse for bad anime adaptations, because that's exactly how they're seen, just a bad adaptation. Outside of anime, it seems more widely acknowledged that an adaptation is separate from the source material and is judged independently. We see the words based on, and we immediately accept that whether this be a good adaptation or bad adaptation, it should be judged based on its own merits, and that's the way it should be. Every medium has different strengths and weaknesses, and you'd be dumb to think that a complete one-on-one adaptation would work for every story in every medium. What's important, in my opinion, is that the adaptation contains the essence of the source material. Lord of the Rings is a great example of this, as for the critical and commercial success that it was, huge chunks of the original books were cut out, honestly leaving the films as an incomplete picture of Tolkien's entire universe. Yet it didn't matter because it worked as a standalone piece in the medium that it was in, regardless of what it was based on. For this to happen, the source material must be viewed as a completely separate piece of work. In other words, irrelevant. This is not to say that we ignore the existence of the source material at all, but when judging an adaptation, it is important that we look at both pieces of work individually and not as a whole. So why does it seem like anime is treated differently to other mediums? Well, anime is also a unique medium in this sense, as it's more used to seeing one-for-one adaptations, since with the history of anime production, which is adapting manga stories, the manga it was based on is almost used as a complete storyboard, and anime has evolved over the years with this principle. Because of this, the majority of modern anime don't even adapt the source material all the way to the end due to the anime production cycle these days. Unlike with American TV shows, which normally get some kind of ending when the network cuts it off, or movies which only really adapts things that are already complete, the amount of anime which only gets 1 or 2 seasons with open endings never to be seen again is vast. We're forced to judge the adaptations we have because, well, we have no guarantee that we'll ever see more of it. But this does beg the question of whether these kinds of adaptation are truly standalone or more of a complementary piece of the source material and extension of the original body of work. See, as I mentioned before with movies and their source material being judged entirely independently, a lot of the times anime adaptations can just be a part of a bigger whole. As I mentioned with Fate Stay Night, an 80+ hour visual novel with multiple routes and a non-linear narrative, it is very difficult, nigh on impossible, to create a faithful adaptation where you get the same experience as you do reading the visual novels. The same can be said with incomplete adaptations like ReZero so far, though to a less complicated extent. So with all this in mind, should we think of anime as just an extension of the original body of work? No, for me, to think that would be to undersell anime as a medium and their subsequent adaptations. There is so much more to judge when it comes to an anime adaptation. You have animation, art, voice acting, music, cinematography, and so many more elements that blend into a product that warrants it to be judged by its own merits. We have good adaptations and bad adaptations, and even if we don't get the complete story, it's still the anime's job to give you some sense of closure at the end of the season, even if it's not the true ending. This is why endings like the original Berserk anime are so detested, because they left us right in the middle of a fucking arc. This doesn't even take into account anime original endings, because like them or not, they are their own separate thing and have been shown that they can work. You know, at least once. Going back to the Lord of the Rings example, you don't need a complete adaptation for it to work. You just need an adaptation that works in the medium it's being presented on. And it's not the source material's job to cover up any faults the adaptation has, it's the adaptation's job to make sure it works in the first place. For example, if this season of ReZero is just the prologue, where is the indication in the adaptation that this indeed is just the prologue? Plus, if we couldn't properly judge something until the entire story is over, that would mean that like 90% of anime would be unreviewable. I mean, how can we properly judge it unless it's complete yet, guys? There's still like 400 volumes of manga left to adapt. You wouldn't possibly know if it's good until you've seen absolutely all of it. In the end, what this really is about is fans wanting others to share their experience they had with a certain franchise. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I've been on both sides of the fence with this one, both as an anime-only watcher watching a so-called awful adaptation, and the fan trying to defend a franchise because an adaptation did not live to what I wanted it to be. Inevitably, we will always be more connected with the medium we first experienced the story in, and when someone can't see the entire picture of what you experienced because of a shoddy or incomplete adaptation, we feel the need to defend the experience we had. So can we all just for a moment take a step back and see that adaptations are not the source material? Different adaptations can have different experiences that are judged entirely independently. So if someone criticizes the adaptation, they aren't criticizing your experience or the thing as a whole, it's just simply what they saw. Or maybe they just have a shitty opinion like me.